Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Fans of DC Universe podcast, the only place where members of the DC Universe come together to talk about what they are reading, watching, and more. Joining us today are Nathan.Payson, me, Donnell,
Hello.
New 52,
Hi.
and brand new to the podcast, Aquaman C137.
Howdy, y'all.
Today, we will be covering Doom Patrol's Emmy chances, HBO Max, Young Justice Outsiders Episode 17, Man of Steel, and Sam Humphrey's Green Lanterns, and more if we have time. First, the news. New 52, do you want to read this one?
Of course. So Emmy nominations will be revealed on July 14th. So the question we're asking is, does Doom Patrol have a chance? Now, before we get started, DC Universe has put stuff in for consideration. I'll make sure to post the Reddit post with the info in the DC Universe community post for the podcast episode, or Nathan will. So everyone, is there one award you would like to see Doom Patrol or Titans nominated for?
That's a good one. Well, I think Titans, I would think the costumes, I really enjoyed the way they had them in, the leather and all that. It seemed much more natural than your typical circus acrobat tights that they have superheroes wear.
The person who I most like to receive this award is Diane Guerrero for Best Leading Actress. She plays Jane, and what impresses me so much about her is that she can swap between 7 or 8 different versions of herself, 7 or 8 different personalities with different physicality and etc. At the drop of a hat. And that's what's so impressive to me is what is it, episode 2 or whatever? Actually, it's episode 1. She has 7 or 8 different things, including Baby Doll. She does Sylvia. The fact that I can name all the different personalities is telling of just how good she is. And I think that was probably the most fun part is she every personality had different physicality, voice style, voicing, voice structure. So for example, some would have stutters, that sort of stuff. And on top of that, she was just such a diverse and emotional range actress, and I think she deserves a nomination for sure.
I gotta agree with both of you because Donnell, the Hawk and Dove costumes were just gorgeous to me. I loved every aspect, every little detail that went into them. And Nathan, you're right about Diane Guerrero. She's completely versatile and she's able to showcase that throughout the show. But what I think Doom Patrol should really get nominated for is Outstanding Main Title Design, because that opening sequence is breathtaking.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that.
I like the opening scene for sure. I'm a bigger fan of Swamp Thing's opening scene. That's one that I never skip. But I do agree that the actress that plays Jane, her range was very good, and honestly, she was my most favorite part of the show.
Well, Aquaman, what's cool with you is you've actually posted pictures of yourself relaxing on a Sunday in the swamp. So it makes sense to me. You'd really love swamp.
Yeah, and sorry to get off topic a little bit, but those pictures I posted were from Greenfield Lake, which is actually where I think it's from the first episode. Correct me if I'm wrong, but where the Alex boat explodes. That's actually where that was filmed.
Wow. Cool.
And I've also, the other day when I was taking a walk after being at the comic shop, Memory Lane Comics in Wilmington, I saw the bridge, that you see Shauna and Abby jump off of and everything, and it was pretty cool. I've never lived in a place where something I like has been filmed in, so it was pretty cool.
If you don't mind, we're all envying you, my friend. That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's really funny because growing up in Memphis, a lot of films take place in some capacity in Memphis, Tennessee. I don't live there anymore, but I'd watch something that takes place there, and I'm like, wait, that was 30 minutes from that's downtown. The craziest story is this is a weird personal story. Is I was living in this house in Memphis, and Guillermo del Toro had an agent come to the house to take pictures from the inside of the house to decide if they wanted to film a movie there. They ended up not filming it there, but it was weird. They were just like, we really like your house, and we think it's in the perfect place. So we want to see if we like it. And it was like one of the top 5 houses for the movie. Very weird experience.
It's funny you say that as I think about settings with the Titans, where it showed Raven's home area and all that. That was just spookily realistic. It looked like a real neighborhood.
Might have been. I just wanted to say that, Dawn, you said you wanted them to get something for costume design. Unfortunately, they did not submit anything for consideration for nominations on costume design, but they did propose Diana Guerrero, and there was one more that was said. Oh, best title sequence, main title design. So they did submit those two. I was looking over the list, and the one thing I hope they also get is a nomination for best press or best makeup for a single camera series for Danny Patrol. So, which with all the drag queens and all that, like I thought that was a very fun makeup wise.
Yeah, that's true. Also, I'm hoping they get Outstanding Director for a Drama Series nominated for Titans, Hank and Dawn. That episode was one of my favorite of any DC shows ever.
I hope they do a spinoff of the series. It seemed like they might be. Comicon ? So second on the list is a big sigh of relief because DC Universe is not getting canceled by Warner Brothers as a result of their impending subscription service now known as HBO Max. DC Universe's community manager, Applejack, has said the following: DC Universe and the newly minted HBO Max are not the same service, and frankly, were never intended to be. We don't have more details on exactly where the chips are going to fall, and believe me when I say that no one is more curious about where the chips fall than we are. But DC Universe is going strong. Our service is built for DC fans, not the broader masses. We deliver originals and ever-expanding digital comic book collection, well on the way to 23,000, and a community where we can engage with and reward our fans, unlike anything that a dedicated streaming service can provide. Be sure to stay tuned for exciting news coming out of San Diego Comicon, which will include DC Universe news about the shows you love. So what are your thoughts about HBO Max and DC Universe?
I guess I'll butt in first here. I think it's bigger than just how does it affect DC Universe. Talking to my wife about it, she's a big Netflix fan, and I was explaining to her all the migration of all these giant libraries of entertainment being yanked out of Netflix all at once, right? Warner, Disney, Marvel, all this just whoosh, gone. And I think some other, it was NBC or one of the others. It's like imagining Netflix without those. Yeah, there is some stuff on Netflix, but in 2 or 3 years, you got to wonder what's, sure, DC Universe, we all enjoy it. But in general, it may well be that there won't even be a Netflix, right? I think that's who's probably worrying more than DC Universe about all what's going on. As far as DC Universe, I do see some interesting synergies where Netflix, right, has been buying up these DC properties like Sandman, right? So I almost get the sense that, and Netflix is hoping, yeah, okay, Warner, but somehow they're going to grab a lot of the DC Universe stuff to kind of supplement what they had with Marvel. Is a suspicion because it seems to be happening.
Yeah, I think I was thinking about this is Disney Plus is taking all the Disney shows, all the Marvel shows, and creating a bunch of original stuff, including shows that tie in with the movies, which Netflix claimed they were doing, but that Marvel never let them do. And they're losing Friends. And when we're talking about DC Universe and its relationship to Netflix, all the Titans, Doom Patrol, and Swamp Thing, and Young Justice internationally are available on Netflix after they finish. So I know Titans is on there. I think Doom Patrol is too. But
and I think it's going to end up being national very soon.
You think Doom Patrol is going to Netflix nationally?
I think it. Yeah. I think that's part of what they're going to do once Marvel slides out. Is they'll just start what they're doing internationally after it shows on DC Universe as the original. it'll, just like they did with CW, right? Suddenly it'll be there national.
But Doom Patrol, we do know, is going to HBO Max. So my guess is it's not going to Netflix. Or it will be leaving Netflix shortly, and it won't be going nationally for sure. We know this because they released a promo trailer for HBO Max with the announcing, and they showed off like 50 different shows and like the fastest span of like words you've ever seen. I ended up having to click space, 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 space to try to go screen by screen. And I was like, I feel like Doom Patrol was here, and I found it. It just says Doom Patrol, and it's there for like 0.001 seconds. But it was in there, so
but the CW
Doom
stuff
Patrol
there
will be
too,
there.
right?
Yeah,
but
so
CW too. So that's what I'm thinking.
CW will not be there unless it's a brand new series starting this year. So that will be Batwoman, Katie Kane, I think, or Katie Keene or whatever the Riverdale spinoff is, and one more. But so Charmed, Flash, Supergirl, all of those, they're gonna stay on Netflix for the time being. I also wanted to say this. DC Universe, Applejack called a very niche community, and I very much agree. I think part of it is it's built for DC fans, and I think because that's its takeaway, I think Warner Brothers would struggle to keep that audience with an increased price tag. I don't see myself paying $8 extra to have what DC Universe, because I don't really care about Friends. I know some people do, but Friends is going to be on there. I don't really care about the Gremlins show. I don't care about HBO all that much. Maybe someday I'll check them out. But I think that's part of the problem. And we know Watchmen's probably going to be on there. But other than that, there's just not much to interest me. It's going to HBO Max. And so I'm really thankful that DC Universe is still here, especially with all the comics.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I've never gotten HBO Go or anything like that, even during the whole Game of Thrones whole, when it was at its biggest. But I actually thought DC Universe had a chance to be something maybe more broad. The fact that they are now labeling it niche and are trying to go through a niche market, I think that's a mistake. I really do believe they could have gone more broad with it, just like Disney Plus is going broad with their Marvel stuff. All of their Marvel stuff is going to be bringing people in. There are people who are paying dollars, more than the subscription, to see DC characters on the big screen. They would definitely pay that same money at home to have all those shows. Just my opinion.
I agree with you. I think part of the problem, though, is that DC Universe hasn't found a way to market itself to everyone else. One of the big things I've noticed is that most people I know don't know about Doom Patrol. Even though every time I'm on YouTube, I swear I get a Doom Patrol or Swamp Thing or Titans ad. For whatever reason, they really want me to watch all these ads, but I haven't met anyone who's actually seen ads for it. And I've had a couple of friends who I've sat with through the pilot episodes so that they can see what it's like, because I love it so much, and they really like it. And some of them are have come over again to keep watching some more of it. But I think the problem with Doom Patrol and Titans is that they haven't had a big enough marketing expansion. And part of what's weird is I was at a restaurant, at some bocce ball hybrid restaurant, and I was sitting down eating food, and on the TV next to me was a Doom Patrol ad. So it's clear they're trying. It was just like a normal commercial, but it was for Doom Patrol. So it's clear they're trying to get to a bigger audience. I just don't think it's I don't think they've been doing a successful enough job of it.
Especially for Doom Patrol, they should be playing up the return of Brendan Fraser. Brendan Fraser should be a big staple in their marketing campaign. And I hear people talk about, oh, I don't know what that show is. And then I tell them Brendan Fraser's in it, and they're like, oh, now I want to check it out.
Yeah, I think one place I was thinking about the DC Universe could do a better job with marketing is putting marketing stuff in the movies. Because I went to Spider-Man Homecoming, and Pennyworth had a trailer in the opening set of trailers. So I think there is potential. I think they need to find better places to market this stuff, because I think everyone would love Doom Patrol. I've been telling people it's Deadpool meets Jessica Jones. you know, like, and I think that's really fun and should work. So I don't know what they could be doing better. And I think HBO Max is going to struggle with the same problem. While it tries to appeal to a larger audience, its content still feels very niche, and like adaptations to novels is from a lot of and what HBO already is. And HBO has a massive audience. But my understanding is they all use the same 4 Netflix passwords. So that could be problematic.
It's definitely, it feels niche to me as well because they decided to brand it HBO Max instead of Warner Brothers or Warner Media or something with Warner in it, because everybody thinks of HBO as a more adult oriented subscription. They're not going to want to bring families or children over, even though it does have Hanna-Barbera, Cartoon Network. Those things are going to be in HBO Max. When you hear HBO, you don't think children or family.
And especially HBO Max, that sounds really bad.
Like Mad Max is one of the first things. Mad Max is one of the first things I thought about, right? So yeah, that's problematic. I do also want to say that if you watch their opening trailer, it's almost all live action, and that's problematic if you want your main audience to include children. Because part of how Netflix succeeds, it has a giant kids section with content that none of us would watch, but lots of it that like that people are get excited about who are kids. There's like Born to Be Free, which is some horse riding show, which is like on its 7th or 8th season. When I'm like, who actually watches this? But apparently a lot of kids do because it's on its 7th or 8th season.
Mm-hmm.
And when you watch HBO Max's trailer and you see so much live action stuff, it just doesn't interest me, and I guarantee it doesn't interest a lot of children. And so it's already losing to Netflix and Disney Plus. Disney Plus, every single show is designed to be appealing to a child. Not a single R-rated thing is going to be on Disney Plus. And it seems to be working, because if I look at their upcoming lineup, we're going to move on in a second, but Forky Ask a Question, which is a spinoff of Toy Story 4, Marvel's Captain or Bucky, Winter Soldier and Falcon. You have Loki coming up. You have Star Wars: The Mandalorian. You have a Rogue One live action remake. You have spin-offs of Monsters Incorporated and all this stuff that have an adult appeal and a kids appeal. And I don't see that in Warner Brothers thing. And I think DC Universe, I actually see it more so because they have Young Justice, which is doing incredibly well. And they have a bunch of comics, which I'll be honest, I think comics can be a great way to teach a kid to read a book because they have lots of pictures, but they have upper level vocabulary. So they're a nice mix of the two. New 52, do you want to read the next story?
Yeah, of course. So, third on the list is DC Universe is at Comicon. In our second week of coverage on DC Universe at Comicon, I wanted to share the following. DC Universe will have 2 panels. So Friday, 19th of July from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., DC Daily will have a panel. Saturday, the 20th from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., DC Universe will have the latest news about Titans Season 2, Harley Quinn the Animated Series, and Young Justice Outsiders, as well as Doom Patrol, though it hasn't been confirmed. More than likely, there will... Sorry,
this is my fault. There will be Doom Patrol Season 2 at the show, and Young Justice Season 4.
Hopefully we get some info on that. And then next week, we'll talk more about Doom Patrol and Young Justice at Comic-Con. But this week, what are your pie in the sky, which are the most likely never happening predictions that you hope to see come out of Comic-Con?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so I really want a Super Sons, the animated series. I think that would be great because John and Damian already are such beloved characters, and what better way to make them more prevalent and more interesting with an animated series, especially because of all the hate that John's receiving with being aged up. I think it's the perfect way to counteract that decision in the comics and appease fans with something more, especially now that the Adventures of Super Sons is over. I also want to see Green Lantern, the animated series, get a season 2 revival. We saw so much success with Young Justice getting a revival. So I want to see Green Lantern, the animated series, get the same treatment. And then finally, we were talking about Hawk and Dove earlier. I think with their TV show, Hank and Dawn, they're like a single episode. And I think we're going to get a Hawk and Dove series spinoff.
Those all sound awesome. Going off of your Hawk and Dove, I would like to see maybe like a smaller budget movie original made for DC Universe.
Yeah, that would be really cool because we don't have any like movie stuff yet.
Yeah, we don't have any like event movies the way that Netflix does. So they could also bring in bigger names into that because they wouldn't have to commit for as many episodes or anything like that. I personally, if we're going to be considering DC Universe a niche market, then let's go even more niche and have an animated series based off of Exit Stage Left, Snagglepuss Chronicles. I would love that.
Aquaman, what were your predictions?
Not so much about predictions. I definitely hope they announce, season 2 for Doom Patrol. I think that'd be a great place to do that. But as far as like pie in the sky things that I'm wishing, like shucks, man, please give me some news on the Superman 2 movie. That, and as far as non-existing properties or things going on, I would say I would really love to see an animated, I mean, it might be too much to like have it be live action shows or movies, but something about like focusing on like the Court of Owls and like from the beginning of Gotham, like up till like Batman's appearance, like focusing on like, their rise to power, and then like, like one shots of like the Italian and everything like that, and different ones throughout the ages. I think that would be very interesting. It could be like, a political, like not Game of Thrones, but, I just think it'd be an interesting story to be told. And I would love to see like a Vandal Savage through the ages, like animated show.
So like a Gotham, but starting with Batman's origins, like starting with the first appearance of Batman and going on and exploring like a lot of the earlier Batman stories, especially in Snyder's run.
No, like more so like the beginning of Gotham. Like if you remember in like Death of the Family, when like you're learning when he sees that picture of the Joker from like hundreds of years ago or whatever, like something like started like the beginning, the origins of like the Court of Owls, and then like it would be kind of like a political, kind of like political struggle kind of thing, and kind of like how South Park jokes about Game of Thrones being like walks in the garden and talks of betrayal. Like I think it would be a very cutthroat series you could do, and then and also having like tell them stories of different Italians throughout the ages, because they're constantly recruiting new ones, like how Grayson's like family had been members throughout.
Oh, so you want a Court of Owls TV show?
Yeah, like I think that would be very cool. And plus like a Vandal Savage like through the ages, like kind of like how we get that one episode. It's one of my favorites from the first half of Young Justice season 3. I think that would be very cool. I think Savage is awesome. That or
Aquaman. Just to interject for a second, that's one of the saddest Young Justice episodes for me. But it's because I also loved it like you did, and I mentioned it to New 52 at the time. I was so furious that they did so many weird still frame with narration over top for his whole life through the ages, rather than making it animated and fun.
I can see your frustration with that. I was just happy to get something,
Yeah.
Pretty easy to please here.
Yeah, and if you do a show like that with Savage, you could cover so many decades of DC history. So it'd be awesome.
It would be amazing, and like you could incorporate so much like historical facts and manipulate them or whatever. And like there's a lot of history buffs out there, and like I think something like that would just be like a prime property to like dabble a little more into.
I think a Savage live action show could be one of the coolest things. Even if it's animated, I think it could be really fun for those reasons. Especially since you could look at like characters like Jonah Hex with the Western stuff. You could look at the classic, like the Golden Age stuff, the Silver Age and the Bronze Age various characters, and help sort of create a better continuity. And you could possibly go to the future and look at like the stuff that Millennium's trying to cover with Batman Beyond, Legion of Superheroes, and that sort of stuff. Because DC has such a wide range of topics. I was just looking up, apparently there's one called like Gotham Knights, which is like a medieval era show, which is a comic book, which is like, what, from New 52? I'll have to look into it, but I definitely think that might be the best proposal so far.
If I
Don,
might
do you have anything?
interject just for a second. Well, yeah, of course, I do have the nickname of Nostradonel, so I do want to give a few here. Certainly, I would love to see a live action comedy, like a Powerless type thing, come up. I think that would be a riot if they did that again. I was a big fan of that show when it was out. Legion, of course, we'd love to see, say, the third season of Legion of Superheroes that we've been doing a monthly watch. Wouldn't that be fantastic? But one of the things I really loved the past year with DCU was the rollout where they would have like either a special event, right, with the premieres or whatever they call it, but also where they would have Fathom do these limited like 2 days in the theater for Death of Superman, Reign of Superman. It'd be really cool if they had like another animation like what they just did with Justice League and Fatal Five, but do something like that where again we get to go to the theater with our families and see it just before it shows up on DCU. I think it's a neat kind of thing they.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about people talking in those sorts of scenarios and like talking about going to return to the double special with Death of Superman. And I ended up watching both of them back to back. Actually, I think I watched them one night consecutively. But I definitely think that there's potential for something along those lines. I know the next thing we have in that vein coming up is Batman Hush, which is going to release on Blu-ray and then a week later come to DC Universe.
It'd be cool if they put that in the theater too.
Oh, that'd be so cool. I don't think it's going to happen though. I do think, what's the last part? Reign of Superman? What's the Return of Superman. I definitely think that's going to do that again. I don't know if they're going to do a triple showing or what, because Reign of Superman.
Oh yeah,
Return of Superman.
where Lex Luthor joins the Justice League. Right?
Yeah, because we still have the third part of the trilogy to go, and I hope they do something with that. We'll probably get some news on that, by the way, at Comicon. I think it might be a little early. It might not be till next year that we hear about it, but I think it could happen. Don, do you want to move on to the fourth item of the list?
I will, but Aquaman, if you had some other thoughts, maybe towards the end, just kind of write them down and tell us some more of your thoughts on that, because I think it's an exciting topic about what's going on at Comic-Con. And I noticed, is that the Sci-Fi Channel is going to have some neat things on their website where they're going to be live at the Comic-Con doing broadcast. So, fourth on the list, Legion of Superheroes. I've heard of those guys. And lots of news about that this week. We had a lot of fun with that over on the Discord channel as well, with the different characters like Matter Eating Lad coming back. And what a riot, right? Basically, we're certainly looking at that cover, the different covers for Millennium, but in particular the one where it shows Jonathan Kent sticking his hand out for Legion ring. You can see Saturn Girl's reflection in the ring, so she's handing it out. New 52 mentioned that she loves seeing that Saturn Girl is going to have a leadership role in the new Legion, putting words in her mouth. That was for you, by the way, New 52.
Saturn Girl.
So what are my thoughts? I was astonished at the diversity, kind of like what we were talking about before the broadcast about how great it would be if every thread on DCU was diverse and inviting for everybody, not just singular smaller groups. And the Legion, did you look at those pictures? You had even people of color that were chubby. You had all kinds of ethnicities. It wasn't just a bunch of white Anglo-Saxon guys waving and a couple of ladies. All right. Very diverse, very cool. Can't wait.
Absolutely. I think one thing that impressed me, and this is something Ben has been doing a great job of, is he's been diversifying the DCU. He's so far had 2 brand new characters he's introduced in the DCU, including Teen Lantern, who's this African American woman who hacked the Green Lantern ring so that it would accept her. And then there's Naomi, who just had finished her miniseries yesterday, and I haven't gotten a chance to read it, but I hear it's really fun. But I was looking at Legion of Superheroes.
I can't believe it's happening.
I was looking at the Legion of Superhero stuff, and I was like, dang, there's all sorts of characters. There's aliens, there's people who are Latino, they're African American, And I hope that he looks at the LGBTQ community too, and sexual diversity. That
Yeah,
sounds
no,
really
I'm
wrong.
sure
Yeah.
they'll all be there. Because again, what you always think of with Legion, and this is where it's tough because there's versions of the Legion like what we watch on the watch-alongs where they're very young and nobody's getting married and nobody's thinking of getting married because they're so young. Although I noticed New 52 that as of episodes 5 and 6 of season 1, you're starting to see them start to pair off a little.
Yeah.
Like what Timberwolf and Phantom Girl, and of course Saturn Girl and Lightning Lad a little, although not as much as you might think.
And you're going to see Bouncy and Triplicate.
Amazing. Yeah. So just what I loved is how they introduced Ultra Boy this last time. Not to get too hung up on the Legion, of course. I hardly ever think of them. But I've been featuring the weddings lately. But you're right, Nathan. Certainly, it's great that they have heroes being married. I think it's cool that they embrace that. But what about other lifestyles? How does that get integrated? And do we really think 1,000 years from now things are still going to be as traditional as they are?
Yeah, I think that's one of the
does a better
things.
job.
I've tried to get into the Legion of Superheroes, and I think the biggest thing that's been hard is it's like, surely 1,000 years from now, right? It's okay for two boys to date, right? It's more or less okay now, more or less. And so surely 1,000 years from now, we're there, right? Instead, everything's very stereotypical, boy meets girls, partly because while it's technically 1,000 plus years from now, it's also written by someone in the 60s, was created by someone in the 60s. And it still tries to match what we think of today and like what's okay today with exactly what's okay then or in the future, right? Which obviously is not true and hasn't been holding up.
What's funny with that is a lot of the cutting edge science fiction, like from Harlan Ellison and others, Kurt Vonnegut, etc., in the 60s, broke into that and were very much into sexual identity and all that. But of course, the comic books, they thought they were writing for 10-year-olds, and it was the last thing. That was, as you know, from that book you suggested I write, Slugfest, I believe it's called. Yep. All right. By the way, Aquaman, are you? I think I don't think you're real involved with Legion at this point.
No, I've definitely read some Legion comics, but my knowledge on them isn't to extent. I do wish we'd get a little more Dawnstar,
Interesting. Yeah. Well, she certainly has a much better costume, in my opinion, with this new iteration. One of the most embarrassing things about running the Legion Club is when I'm dipping into the stories from the late 70s, early 80s, where basically it looks like there's a beach party going on and everyone's wearing their swimming suits for fighting sharks. It just does no sense. Zero sense. I'm going out to battle with someone with an axe that can cut through atoms, and I'm wearing a bikini. Sure. Yeah, that totally makes sense. I'm an army who's out to enforce the United Planet's will, and I showed up wearing a tutu. I mean, just crazy. The whole thing is too much. Anyway, but I have to slog through it because it is part of the history of it. But you just take it, Nathan, you just think about it as it's quaint, right? It's just quaint that we had those views.
But
it's also funny when you look at what they think.
Speaking of the designs, some, like half of them are absolutely gorgeous or really cool and awesome. The other half, I gotta say, not a fan.
Our girl.
I know. And like, and I don't know which ones you like personally, but I'm thinking like Karate Kid is kind of fun. Timberwolf looks fine.
Mm-hmm.
Ultra Boy, I've always liked the outfit he runs around with. The green and the red is something you don't see a lot of uniforms with. On and on, but yeah. Then some of the others, it's like, what were they thinking? I don't know. I kind of slog through it.
Oh, I misspoke. I meant Saturn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, should I move on to the next topic?
Yeah.
All righty. Fifth on our list, Applejack answered Nathan. By the way, I should mention while we're doing this, Office Hours has been running, and I want to let Aquaman and Nathan know that Applejack's been talking to you, and hopefully you'll go and read her responses later. So she wrote here, though, to Nathan on Flash Rebirth #1 being missing. She said, "We're happy to report that as of today, almost 90% of reported comic issues since the launch of the library in May have been resolved. The remaining have delayed fixes due to longer-term solutions being required. I got to say that two things there, Nathan. One is the comic book reader on my phone or on my computer or even on my tablet, fantastic, right? They're doing okay. Roku, it's still a mess. And I love reading comics on Roku. Every time, halfway through, panel by panel blows up, and I'm looking at a whole page on a TV screen. Unfortunately, they got a little ways to go on some of these technologies. But as far as, I guess she's talking more about where different comics are missing that should be there, that kind of thing. And also, by the way, Nathan, I'm on the HD resolution, and I still end up with DC. Some of the panels are still kind of grainy. You're not having that problem at all?
No, I'm not, because I think when you look at the comics, what I notice is that there's a rebirth, or no, not a rebirth. I'm really tired today, you guys. I had coffee too, and I'm still tired. There's an HD and SD button on the phones, at least, and you just click HD and it's fine. If you go to the panel by panel, it can be a little bit grainy, especially with older comics, because older comics were just written with fewer pixels. Or actually, not even pixels.
Yeah, by the way,
they weren't pixels,
that brings up a good point. So yeah, page by page looks great. It's when I do panel by panel, even with new stuff like the Justice League we've been reading, or that No Justice that you just walked us through. That I had some panels that were embarrassingly grainy. But what's weird is when I read something on Comixology where I download the comic and then read it, I've never run into that problem.
Try doing is downloading before you read, or making sure you have the HD button turned on, because there is an SD and HD, and I do notice the difference when HD's on.
No, I agree, and I do have it on HD. Well, anyway, I don't want to go round and round about that. I think Applejack herself has mentioned on some of her forums that she wishes it was a little better reader as well, and hopefully it will be. Since they obviously, back to the thing about future state of DCU. I know New 52, you're hoping this doesn't happen, but it won't shock me because of the pricing that they're giving us right now being identical to Marvel Unlimited. And they're giving us all their comics plus all the other. Either they're going to raise the prices or they are going to limit. Is a suspicion I have in that next year where it's going to be mainly, which would make me sad because New 52 would run away from home.
I don't think they would need to raise the prices at all, especially with HBO Max getting the live action shows. They'll be able to carry some of that financial burden.
Cool.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And because if HBO Max is getting the shows, they're still gonna make the shows, right? Because it'll help HBO Max out, which is, let's be honest, content is how these services will succeed, right? HBO Max will only succeed as long as it has shows that of the quality of Doom Patrol. And so I don't think there's going to be any price increase over the cost. It is possible with Swamp Thing there was some tax snafu. I'm not going to go into it because it's speculative. But I think price-wise, don't worry. I do want to say thank you, Applejack, so much, if you're listening to this, for working on all of our comics complaints you have, especially when it comes to like, oh, this issue is missing this panel or this page, or the super obscure stuff that you wouldn't even think you would have to deal with. Thank you for working through it and making an effort and telling us when stuff gets fixed and when you've already addressed something. It's really cool that there's a community section, partly because we can say this is a problem and it can get fixed. Whereas with Marvel Unlimited, you're just like, well, I hope they fix it. Or you go through and you try to find where the tech is and maybe then they'll fix it. But it's so much easier. And I think you guys agree. Like I just posted, I'm like, Flash #1 still broken. And she immediately texts and she sends a message back within the next like 5, 6, or I think it was the next day, but because I sent it late at night. But it was really quick, and I really appreciate that sort of stuff. And the fact that 90% of them have been reported, because I've looked through the list, there's a bunch that have been reported. Like I want to say over like hundreds. That I'm so thankful we're that close.
It's all good.
Last but not least on the list today. New comics have come to DC Universe this week, including, I'm going to take a deep breath before I start. Okay. Batman #50, The Wedding. Catwoman #1, the follow-up to The Wedding. Curse of the Brimstone #4. DC Nation #2, which is basically an infomercial. Deathstroke #33, Part 4 of Deathstroke versus Batman. Green Arrow versus #42. Green Lantern's hit number 50. Yay! Harley Quinn number 45 is a soft reboot. Justice League 2, Injustice 2, Chapter 65. Justice League number 3, Man of Steel number 6, which is the end of the miniseries. Nightwing number 46, Shade the Changing Woman number 5, Teen Titans Go Chapter 57, The Unexpected number 2, and then newly digitized, which means it's been out for a long time, but it's finally come to the digital services as a result of it getting scanned and that sort of stuff, and recolored and stuff. Detective Comics number 316, Doom Patrol from 2004, number 5 and 6, Our Man 1999, 11 and 12. This is so much to say. Okay, House of Mystery number 174 and 175, House of Secrets number 102, Johnny Thunder number 1, and Superman Presents the Phantom Zone number 1. Okay, now what have you guys read off this list?
Well, first of all, Superman Presents the Phantom Zone number 1 blew me away because it's the exact writer-artist team that did Howard the Duck over at Marvel. Just killed me. So you got Gene Colan with that fantastic, very cinematic, smoky kind of stuff he did for Daredevils for so many years, and then Howard the Duck. And then you got Steve Gerber, Madman Steve Gerber, right, who did things like Howard the Duck, but also that wonderful run of the Defenders around 30 where you had stuff like Nighthawk's brain in a bowl for several issues, weird stuff like that. How wonderful that I can't wait to read that one. I was looking it over and it looks just like what they did at Marvel, just hilarious. And of course I did say what I'm sorry not to see are all those wonderful Lois Lanes I'm having fun with on my wacky site. But for myself, I already read Green Lanterns 50. Kind of, it was a Dan Jurgens taking over at that point on that one, which was okay. It was an interesting thing. Anytime they bring in Cyborg Superman, they got my. I'm still not sure I'm going to read Batman 50. I did read Man of Steel number 6 and turned in my book report, Professor Nathan.
Oh, thanks.
Shade the Changing Woman. I liked Shade the Changing Girl. I don't know if any of you read it. Those 4 or 5 issues. Very cool, very surrealistic. Neat thing where she comes from an avian, bird-like alien race, and then she's here, and it's related to the other Shade, the Changing Man stuff. This one, the new one, I'm not as enchanted with, but I definitely love the first series. I think you can find them. And that's it from Grandpa. That's what I like.
So this week I've read through the Man of Steel, both Batman titles, so Catwoman and Batman, the Green Arrow, Justice League, and I have like 5 more I plan to read. That sounds like a lot because I actually read a lot of this stuff because this is how I get my daily dose of DC. The other thing I want to talk about, and this might take a little bit, is that I've been reading Sensational Comics, which is the Wonder Woman's first real comic. Why they didn't just do Wonder Woman, I still couldn't tell you to save my life. But I want to talk about one issue in particular because it was just too funny. Okay, so basically, Wonder Woman discovers that this big corporation has no milk. Or let me rephrase, they have lots of milk. They've increased the price of milk by like 10 cents. So it's now 17 cents or whatever, or it's like 27 cents instead of 17 cents. These numbers are probably wrong, but they upped the price of milk by 10 cents. So all the poor people are dying because they can't afford milk. Okay, continuing, this story gets crazier because she goes up to the big corporation. She shames the leader for the price of milk. And when all is said and done, the leader has a trap door exactly where she's standing, and she falls all the way down to the bottom of the building and eventually ends up knocked passed out in a giant container of milk, which they're going to drown her in. But fortunately, she manages to escape, and she's like, oh no, that was 2,000 people worth of milk. All those people are going to die now because they couldn't get this milk. Anyway, point is, this issue gets crazier and crazier and crazier. There's so much crazy stuff. If you have to read one classic comic this week, I would read Sensational Comics number 7 because it's everything to love about Golden Age goofiness, and it's just over the top crazy.
It is definitely, as you're talking, that is way up.
It's like, how do they even come up with these plots? And also, why is everyone dying because they can't drink milk? That's not how it works. You just drink water. Milk, you don't need milk to live, especially if you're above the age of 2.
Well, actually, you know, back when I grew up.
I'm sorry.
Exactly.
It's the age of 4, and it was like European descents were able to be lactose, consume lactose, and it was actually one of the things that helped, Genghis Khan, his army. They were able to, consume like horse milk and things like that, which was a better protein source than like the Chinese with like the rice. It's but yeah, most of the world after the age of 4 you can't, but it's definitely an evolutionary advantage.
Yeah. So why is this corporation raising the price of milk and killing all these people? Because some people can, because people are lactose intolerant anyway, But it was such a wacky story for the reason of nothing that happened made any sense. But it was way too enjoyable. Anyway, but that's Sensational Comics number 7, which is on one of the earlier appearances of Wonder Woman. I am actually reading through 1 through 24 because Comic Book Carols is a fast track through DC. So I'm going through classic stories and reading them in the fast track order. I think up next is O'Neill's Batman. And then last, I wanted to talk about Green Lanterns for a little bit because it hit issue 50 issues in. What I love about Green Lanterns number 50 is that you really see the connection between Jessica Cruz and Simon Baz. Maybe Baz. I'm sorry. But you really see the connection, and they have such great personalities. Simon's feels like the criminal justice system has been against him his whole life, partly because of the color of his skin, but also because he's Muslim, and he has lots of self-confidence issues. And Jessica Cruz has PTSD from like a horrifying incident, which they explore in the back end of the 50 issue run. And these sorts of instances are just heartbreaking. And you watch Jessica Cruz break through her issues and start to fight them. And she goes from can't get out of bed to fighting alien wars. And you see her progression, and you see her falling back sometimes and pacing forward. And you even see at some point Jessica Cruz being the more confident one and Simon. So they sort of flip flop. And I think this is one of those series which will get underrated over the course of history, but it's such a fun series. You guys should all check out if you're going to check it out.
I want to say I've also read a reissue of it and would buy it when it was new on the stands back when I was still buying physical comics. Sam Humphries, I became a Sam Humphries fan for life because of what he did the first 32 issues. He was so good at character development and exploring not just the two main characters, which itself was a super idea, making them have to be lanterns together, but their extended family. So you got to meet Jessica, you got to meet Simon's family. You'd see them at social gatherings with each other. It was just a neat friendship, and they never made the mistake of making it a romance. It was just a neat, kind of like what you get at work, right? Where you've got people of the opposite sex that you still can be friends with. It doesn't have to be a romantic. It can still be very uplifting, and you can kind of make each other better for the relationship. So yeah. Just I'm not as big a fan from 33 on. I still have to read some of that actually more carefully, even though I like some of the work of Seeley. I think it's Tim Seeley, the one that does Revival, which I kind of like the first bit of that. But boy, the first 32 issues, I would like to think will be about, but what kills me is watching them separate the two. So now you got Jessica all by herself in Justice League Odyssey. Simon's just out of luck looking for work, I guess.
Yeah, and what's weird about skipping ahead to Justice League Odyssey is Jessica Cruz is the sane one now. Which is like what's so crazy is the fact that if I had seen Jessica Cruz now and Jessica Cruz in issue number 1, they're not the same Jessica Cruz, and Green Lanterns really shows her path to becoming that confident person, and she still has her moments as any person with PTSD would, but it's such a special series, and I hope in history it remembers it as one of the great rebirth series. I don't think it will, unfortunately. But it's totally worth the check out.
That Jessica has even more than PTSD. I mean, she's got some other mental health issues, which again makes it so compelling. And anyone that's gone through mental health issues that then comes on the other side and is able to function and hold a job, you realize you still have the scars from that. You're never 100% after you walk through something.
Right, and I think one thing that's so cool is they aren't friends when the issue starts. When at number 1, Green Lantern's Rebirth number 1, they hate each other. And it all starts with Hal Jordan saying, "You two hate each other? Well, I'm just going to remove one of your Green Lanterns, and now you guys both have to share the same lantern." And he forces them to work together in everything. Of course, he comes here, he's like, "This is what's going to happen," and then he leaves. And Jessica and Simon are like, "Well, I hate you, but I guess we got to make do with what we make do." And you watch the friendship develop. One of my favorite moments is they have this moment where they eat pancakes. And it's just like they want to eat pancakes. And it's like Jessica has to get out of bed. And then stuff happens. And they finally have to sit down and eat pancakes in the issue. But it's these sorts of little moments which show how great of friends they are. And it's so fantastic. So please go read any part of Green Lanterns number 1 through 50. Especially read as much as you can, because it's such a great series. It's showing arc development, and I think you will love it. New 52, are you watching anything? Or, reading anything?
Yeah, as far as reading, I've read Green Arrow number 42 when it came out a year ago. It was Green Arrow versus Parasite, I believe, where he goes into the prison.
Yep.
It was pretty good.
Yeah, it's really fun. One thing I appreciate about it, which is unique to the series, is that Parasite is like very nuanced. Like it's not what I was expecting. Like this new Parasite ended up being a lot more tragic, and I think it really elevated the series. And I probably will never forget that story as a result of Parasite's like tragicness. And I think that's another great one to check out. It'll be interesting. It's also interesting because I put it on the new DCU book club reading because it explores the Hall of Justice a little bit more, the new Hall of Justice, which apparently includes super prisons. So there's like villains.
Well, until Nathan comes back, Aquaman, have you been reading anything?
Yeah.
Donnell muted. Donnell shut his sound off.
Are we still talking?
Is it possible I left? I don't even think I can leave and come back in, can
I? Sorry about that. We are having a tech issue. Can someone talk? Well,
as far as things that are on the list, I have not been reading too much of these. I believe the Justice League number 3. I'm assuming that is part of the Odyssey, or I'm sorry, not the Odyssey, but the Totality. And I did just finish reading that first volume. It was pretty good. I had taken a break from the Rebirth Justice League. I bought in the first 3 volumes like out of faith, and they were really kind of hit or miss for me, especially with some of the artwork. But I am enjoying the Totality. I am a Zack Snyder fan, or Scott Snyder. I'm sorry.
I definitely agree. You should definitely check out Justice League number 3, and more partly because what's nice about the Totality, right, is it explores a bunch of different forces at work in the DC Universe, and it's really interesting, and crazy stuff happens. Like it's one of maybe the biggest scoped ongoing series maybe of all time, and I think that's definitely worth a check out. And last but not least, Man of Steel. Actually, do you guys want to talk about Wedding or Man of Steel? Because we're running out of time.
It's up to y'all.
Okay, let's do the Wedding. Sorry, guys, we're running out of time. We had a lot of news today. The Wedding is wonderful because it's a love letter to Batman, and I know it's controversial. I don't know what your opinions are on it, but I really like it. I wrote a review on it, which you can actually see in the comics section of DC Universe in the comics chat room, the community forums. But I really enjoyed it, and I actually started crying at one point. I don't even know why, but I started crying a little bit as I was going through.
I actually have not read The Wedding. I did buy the first volume, I Am Gotham, and I wasn't crazy about it. I felt like it was more just like someone wearing the cape and cowl. I was much a bigger fan of Scott Snyder's run on the New 52. But I did just recently, a week or 2 weeks ago, watched a DCU member, shout out to Tornado Soup. He just started a YouTube channel, and his first video was a synopsis or kind of him expressing his opinions on Tom King's run and why he thinks, it unfolded the way it did. And I was definitely intrigued by it, and I'm probably going to check it out. I have a lot of stuff on my reading list, but I'm definitely going to get around to it.
Tom King's definitely an artist who got better as he went on, especially as a writer. I think Volume 1 is really about setting the stage, and it sets the stage in some small ways, which come back around. But what's nice is it definitely gets way better, and you really start to see the longer you go how much of a big picture plan he has for the whole series. Like, it's hard to tell early on, but every single moment, even from the very first issue, is thought out in a really intriguing way. And it's all about building Batman up and making him happier and happier and happier, and then taking him back down. And I really enjoy it. I think a lot of people's complaint with 51 through 74 is that it's painful to watch him go all the way down, and that people have gotten frustrated because it's a super long amount of time for him to just keep falling apart and doing more and more crazy things. And people are like, we get it. He's like, his psyche's terrible. But, but it's a great series. I actually think I think it's very binge readable. I don't think it's a great series to read 2 issues or 1 issue every 2 weeks. Partly because stuff like Nightmares just drags on otherwise. Like when you have a single end issue that's like no dialogue period, like people are gonna be like, what the frick? I just paid $4 for this thing, for this
now for the opposing view, because we have a few seconds. Tom King, like any really good, decent writer, people are going to love him. They're going to hate him. He's got a very unique style. He has a very unique vision. Speaking of which, I enjoyed his series on the Vision and his family with Marvel for 12 issues, but it wasn't what you would expect. It was full of things like murder and horrible, terrible tragedies. Tom King comes from a very special angle. And just like with Heroes in Crisis, right? There's a lot of people that really don't like Tom King. It's an acquired taste. I was not thrilled with the last issue of Mr. Miracle. The first 11 issues, I'm like, wow, that's great. Way to go, Tom. So cool, so insightful. Last issue, I'm like, you've got to be kidding. It's kind of like the last episode of Lost. Familiar with that series. But that's okay. I get it. He has definitely integrity with what he does. But people felt very upset about that wedding not taking place.
Yeah, I actually really like the final issue of Mr. Miracle, but we could go on into this for forever. But I agree with you. I think some people like Tom King, some people don't. It's fascinating watching reviewers review Batman, because just yesterday, 74, I saw people who were like, Batman's back. It's back in style. It's good again. You guys should jump back on the train because this issue was great. And I saw people and I saw someone who had the reverse, which said, last issue was great and you should have jumped on last issue, but this issue is bad. Once again, bad. So I think every issue is just very much a toss-up. Some people will love it, some people won't. When you have an issue that the lyrics to Home on the Range are more prevalent than actual dialogue, you'll either love it or you won't, It was funny.
I'm very eager to see what he does with New Gods, where he's doing part of the script writing for the new movie for the New Gods.
Yep. Okay, let's move on to watching. So this week that came out was Swamp Thing episode 7 and Young Justice episode 17. However, unfortunately, because while this is releasing on a Friday, we had to record this on a Thursday, so we have not seen Swamp Thing episode 8. So, what do you guys think of Young Justice episode 18 or 17?
I loved it. I'm so happy Wonder Girl is getting a focus again, because she's been missing for far too long and she's important to the Young Justice canon. So I loved this whole lineup with Static, Impulse. Just loved it.
Yeah, same here. I really liked this episode a lot. Besides this episode, it was right up there with the Vandal Savage episode. I can't think of the title names, and the Arrow Security Service, that episode, I think it was number 2 or 3. It was hilarious. But this one really had a season 1 vibe to me. Yeah, like the way, like, a young team coming together, and it was a nice little twist with the social media aspect of it. And finally, I got to see some Aqualad. Oh my goodness, dude! Like, come on, I've been starving for some Aqualad in this show.
Yeah, it felt a lot tighter as an episode. It felt more structured, and it did feel familiar to that first season because the first half kind of felt like we were ramping up to something, but it also felt maybe like a prequel to the second half. The second half feels like it's actually the main series. Like we finally got a name drop of the Outsiders, which at first I thought it was going to be Batman's team, or maybe the team that's the leaders working behind the scenes. But now we know that the Outsiders are the Wonder Girl team with Gar Logan. So we finally get into the subtitle of the season, and it only took halfway through.
Yeah, I agree. It was like we got our vegetables out the way. Now it's time for the good stuff.
I really liked the first half because it introduced a lot of new characters to me, but the second half just seems to have much more of a direction it's heading. The first half was very much about let's share the world a little bit more. Let's focus on this core group and show the status of the world. I think what's nice about the second half is it's taking the time now to say, okay, here are the things that happened in the time jump. Let's explore a couple of them, which you weren't expecting. So we got a little bit more of Aqualad as Aquaman, because now he's Aquaman, right? He's not Aqualad anymore. He's Aquaman. I don't know what happened to the Aquaman, but those sorts of explorations are really important. I'm glad we're finally getting a chance to explore them. I'm hopeful that we soon get to know why Miss Martian is now her white Martian self more. Like, as for she was a green Martian for forever, and one of the most stark contrasts was watching the first episode and being like, wait, why is she like white skin now? Not you know what I mean.
Bald McGann.
Right. It's like, why? I don't know. But I'm glad that we're finally getting to explore some of that stuff.
I feel like that could have been explored more in the digital series, in the digital comic series that was exclusive to DC Universe. If they would have expanded and had more issues, we could have covered that, and it would have been a really nice touch to the whole season overall.
Not for this previous Tuesday's episode, but from the first three that was done the week prior. I can't remember if it was the number 13, but the first one that had like the female Furies. I love that. I'm a huge Big Barda fan. I'm reading the Female Furies series right now. Super good. But I thought it was hilarious that Big Barda sounded like Rita Repulsa from Power Rangers. Did anyone notice that?
I wonder if it's the same voice actress.
I wonder, but like, I mean, I loved it. I thought she sounded awesome, but I could not help but think about, I bet she's fighting the Power Rangers in her spare time.
She's just stuck in a space dumpster on her off.
I agree. I think what's so funny is that about this issue was the news reporter team. There was 3 girls who were live streaming everything, and what was great about it was each of the girls is actually apparently thanks to whoever wrote the article on DCU, but apparently all the 3 girls are representative of different characters of Scooby-Doo.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll tell you when I see it, but they're representative of the News Girl Legion from Star Spangled Comics number 7, or which was at that point the News Boy Legion. And it's really interesting because they were like Scooby-Doo. So, for example, one of them I think even said Jinkies. But I'm going through the DCU article now. But apparently,
and their phones were color coded.
Yeah, they were color coded for the different characters, and one of them was dressing a snowman with an ascot, and that one was symbolic of the character that matched that color. I'm sorry, I don't know enough about Scooby-Doo to give all the facts. But if you're interested in hearing more about the Legion and Scooby-Doo, go to the DCU fan news article. Joshua Lappenbertone wrote the article, and he'll break down some of that a little bit more thoroughly, and it was really interesting.
And I really appreciated
those. Wait to watch all the.
Yeah, I really appreciated those three girls because they reminded me of that, like Lois Lane with the gumption. They were gonna get the news no matter what, and how they singled out Wonder Girl because it did mean something to them specifically that they saw a female in the team. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a good show of like female empowerment. Dom, what were we gonna say?
Oh, I'm just saying, I feel bad. I still haven't caught up on Young Justice. I somehow got sucked into the watch along vortex this week. I'm on 3 of them, along with everything else. But next week, I think I only have like one watch along, so I'll have plenty of time to catch up.
Yeah, there was a lot of watch alongs this week.
Well, we got one again tomorrow night with JL. That's why we're doing this podcast tonight, because many of us are on the JL one for Man of Steel.
Yeah, I am definitely. I'm skipping the Young Justice just to do that one.
That's awesome. There's a lot of great podcasts, or not. Wow, I'm tired. Watch-alongs. I'm really enjoying just reading through some of the comments on Dawn's Krypton one, which is fun. This week you guys are watching episode 5. Go watch Krypton, you guys. At some point we'll do a Krypton bonus episode. Is there anything else you guys want to say before we wrap it up?
No, man, this has been really fun, and thanks for inviting me, all.
Yeah, thanks for hosting, and thanks everyone for being here.
Awesome. Well, that's all the time we have today. If you like this podcast, please let us know what your thoughts are, and stay tuned next week as we talk about the Flash Wars conclusion, and we'll try to do Man of Steel. We also will talk about what we want from Doom Patrol Season 2 and Young Justice Season 4 and more. Also, if we hit 10 subscribers on Google Play, I know that sounds sad, but if we do, we will expand to Apple Podcasts and maybe do a bonus episode, hopefully on Krypton. See you guys next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Later, y'all.